Thank you for joining us for the STS-119 Discovery Launch Update Briefing. Joining me today is Mike Moses, the Chairman of the Mission Management Team, Mike Leinbach, Shuttle Launch Director,
Hello.
and Kathy Winters, Shuttle Weather Officer.
Good evening.
We'll hear from our panelists and then we'll take questions. Mr. Moses?
Thanks, Kendra. Let's see, welcome everybody. Not the event we wanted to be talking to you about here, but that's life in the space business. Sometimes things happen. Pretty much I'm going to turn it right over to Mike Leinbach here and let him tell you what happened today, the actions the team took. I'll preface that by saying they did an outstanding job and did all the right things. It's just a testament to that team's professionalism that they made those decisions and full support here of the program. Then after he's done, we'll come back. I'll talk a little bit more then. I'll let him talk to you about what happened. I'll talk to you about what that means to us long term from the program standpoint. But rather than get into that all right now, I'll just let Mike talk.
Okay. Well, thanks, Mike. So let's see, folks. I'll try to explain this slowly and thoroughly. We got into our external tank loading on time at 5 minutes till 12 this afternoon, and everything was going fine. We go through it's an automated sequencer for both the liquid oxygen and the liquid hydrogen systems. And when we were about 98% full on hydrogen, we go into a sequence from fast fill, where we're really pumping the fluid into the tank at a high rate, to a rate that we call topping. The rate slows down, and in conjunction with that slowing down of the filling, we open the vent valve on the side of the external tank. It's that arm that connects to the side of the tank that falls away at T0. When we open that vent valve, that's when we notice the hydrogen leak on the ground side. And part of our standard procedure when we get a leak there, and we've had leaks in this area before, we cycle that valve. And in the past, there have been a couple occasions that I remember personally that when you cycle that valve, the leak goes away. And it's usually either a transient contamination issue or maybe a little bit of ice buildup. But nevertheless, in the past when we cycled that valve, the leak stopped. This time it didn't. We know we have some sort of hardware compromise out there. We cycled that valve in the order of 8 or 9 times, and it never cleared up. And so we're sure we have some hardware issues out there. Until we actually get out there and inspect it, we're not exactly sure where in the system the hardware failure is. But I can tell you it's 99.9% sure it's on the ground side, not the flight side. We saw no hydrogen indications inside the inner tank of the external tank, which is the area between the LOX and the hydrogen tanks. No issues there. It was purely an external leak at the connection there. We went through the cycles as I was talking about, and in conjunction with that, we were talking to the team about the best course of action, and it became clear to me that we were not going to fly today, and the best course was to go ahead and get into drain of the tank. And we declared that, I believe it was at 14:36, 2:36 Eastern Time this afternoon. We declared scrub of this vehicle and to go into a 24-hour scrub turnaround. When we started into the scrub turnaround, we cycled that valve again, and indeed it leaked every time we cycled it. And so we're sure that we have some hardware issues there. Again, we'll know over the next few days, next couple of days, where that problem is, and we'll go fix it. Currently, the team is we're done with draining the external tank. Next up on the schedule is an inerting of the external tank. That takes a good 20 hours or so before we can even get our hands on the hardware. You'll recall at the bottom of the external tank there's a little pool of hydrogen that is always left behind after drain because of the configuration of the plumbing. And so it takes about 20 hours for all that to boil off and then inert the tank. And so tomorrow afternoon, the plan lays out that we'll go get hands on the vehicle and start our troubleshooting. And we have a rather aggressive troubleshooting plan put together, detailed measurements of the ground umbilical carrier plate, which is the actual connection to the tank, followed by more than likely opening up of that valve and looking at the internal components and seeing where the problem really is. So we've laid out a schedule. We've told Mike that tomorrow afternoon we'll come back and gather again with a program with a more detailed schedule, and then sometime Friday we'll probably have some more results on the hardware inspection themselves. So we were in a condition today where we were leaking hydrogen. It was external to the vehicle, never in any danger or anything like that, but we have ground safety limits on the amount of hydrogen we can be leaking, and we violated those. And so the best course of action was indeed to stop flow and drain that tank. So that's where we are, and we hope we'll get into the troubleshooting over the next couple of days and support a launch as soon as we can. Kathy?
Well, weather is certainly still looking pretty good all the way through the weekend. We do have an increase in low-level moisture that's going to be coming in, so we've had very clear weather the last couple of days. Today looked very good out there, but as we get into the next few days, we may see some more clouds, but still overall, we're looking pretty good for the weekend. We're looking at a 20% chance of KSC weather violating launch both on Saturday and on Sunday. We might increase that number a bit on Monday. Tuesday is really the day where we have our next frontal system coming into the area. So for the next several days, we're certainly good with the vehicle exposed. There's no weather threat to that, and also there are a lot of launch opportunity there when it comes to weather. So really overall, still looking good weather-wise.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see, a couple more comments here from me. So Mike laid out a schedule. It's a pretty aggressive schedule. We had an MMT scrub turnaround meeting. It was pretty short. Basically, we heard the preliminary plan, and the right thing to do is let that team go off and define the test objectives they really need to go look at, the hardware they want to go see, what kind of access we'll have. There's some things in there that we can hopefully maybe get better on, some standard numbers and that go with things like retorque requirements and retest that we might be able to take out. But we want to make sure we're being smart about that and not rushing into it. So we have lots of time now to go do that. So the team's going to do that. We'll status again in the morning, but we're officially going to re-meet again tomorrow afternoon as an MMT to talk what that schedule looks like. Again, we're really trying hard to make the 15th if we can. The 16th might just be the day that's out there, the date will be what it is, and we'll adjust to it. So let me talk a little bit about the impacts of that. First off, we told the crew today, and we told the management team, all the folks that travel down here for a launch, to go ahead and reset themselves and be set up for a no earlier than Sunday attempt. So that means a lot of folks are probably going to go home. I actually don't know the specifics of what the crew is going to be doing, but I do know they're going to have it a little easy now, so that we're not going to try to just go day by day here. Impacts to the space station. We talked pre-launch a fair bit back around the FR timeframe about how long station could push it, and we had originally told you guys it was like the 16th or so, but again, we hadn't really sharpened our pencil too much. We knew the ISS team and the mission operations team back in Houston had really put a good story together. We just didn't need to look at it very closely as a mission management team, and at this point we're now going to dust that off and take a look. Heard from Mike Suffredini today, the ISS program manager, that we could launch as late as the 17th, so we could have a launch attempt on the 17th, and we would still have a mission. And as I explained last time, let me just recap. What that means is Soyuz cutout is two parts. The first part is the actual Soyuz launch and the Soyuz duration. We don't want a shuttle there while that Soyuz is docking for a lot of reasons, mostly a crew loading standpoint. That's a very busy time with a crew handover on station. The other part of it is this mission that we're about to launch, the STS-119 15A mission, and we can kind of control that variable by changing the length of that mission. And that's what the ISS program has decided to do. From a trade space, it is much more advantageous to them to get off and a launch attempt before this Soyuz cutout rather than waiting to the other side. It has some pretty big impacts to six-person crew and downstream activities. So what they do is they move some of those EVA activities off to the stage. The stage crew is trained to do that. If you looked at the EVA content for this mission, the S6 truss install and saw deploy is the big main objective, and that takes about an EVA to go get that truss bolted on, and then it's actually not an EVA day to do the saw deploy, the solar array deploy. Most of the other activities were spaced in and around get-ahead tasks that we wanted to do before the next flight. So there's no magic that they happen on this flight with this crew. We can do them in the stage. One of the things you lose is the efficiency. This crew has trained, if you think about it, an EVA crew practices so much that they effectively know exactly what handrail they're going to grab next. Their hand coordination is basically memorized. It makes them very efficient. That way we can maximize that 8 hours they're out there on an EVA and get the most done. The stage crews up on station right now are trained to do the same tasks. For example, some of our get-aheads were to go out to the P6 truss and break the torques on some of the batteries that the next mission, STS-127, is going to change out. If we left it to that mission, we need to add a whole nother EVA, and you'd be looking at a 6 EVA mission on that flight, which is not the right thing to do. So we were going to have this crew do a little bit of that get-ahead. There's no reason the stage crew can't do that. It's a simple enough task. Our guys had trained very well to have it orchestrated to fit in very nicely with what they're doing, but there's nothing magic about us doing it on the shuttle team. So the station team was very happy with that plan, and they're very comfortable. We'll talk a couple more times as we go, but basically we could launch as late as the 17th. One of the tricky parts when we talk about content is we get into a flight day 4 rendezvous. Normally we rendezvous on flight day 3. So a launch attempt on the 15th, if we can make Sunday, one of the reasons why we're gonna make sure we can scrub that as good as we can, is that is a flight day 3 rendezvous. We'd have an 11-day mission with 3 EVAs. If you go to the 16th, that's now a flight day 4 rendezvous. So we lose a day because it's the 16th, and we lose a day because it takes 1 extra day to rendezvous. So for that, we're looking at a 10-day mission with only 1, maybe 2 EVAs. But again, from a content, that would meet all our mission objectives that would satisfy the S6 install, which is our main objective for this flight. The other big impact is sitting on the range, ready to go behind us, is an Atlas V WGS payload. They have a launch date of the 14th on the range schedule right now. We had negotiated with them. We pulled up our launch date to today, and they moved one to the right to try to deconflict with us to give us 2 good attempts. It doesn't look like all that talking ahead of time is going to pay off, but we'll keep talking. We basically just got off the phone with them, and we're going to set ourselves up in a posture where we really kind of want to wait till tomorrow. There's a good chance that if we look like we can't go till Monday, we'll see if the Atlas can go in front of us, and then we'll go on the other side of it. Again, it's a little too early to tell. We need to really wait till tomorrow, till the team comes back with that master schedule, and we have a really good cut at what we think we really need to do to be ready for another launch attempt. So that's kind of how it's all going to play together. I basically laid out the variables I have to work with and juggle over the next couple days. I can't tell you where the balls are going to fall, but that's the juggling I'm going to be doing for the next couple days. So it should be straightforward enough. We got a lot of good people providing the content and the detail behind that. And so that's really all I had to sum up where we're going. I'm sure you guys have some questions for us.
Thank you. We'll take questions now. When the microphone comes your way, please state your name, your affiliation, and to whom you're addressing your question. Marcia.
Press from Mike Moses. Would the 17th, if you launch on the 17th, would that look pretty much like the 16th, assuming a flight day 3?
Yeah, the 17th goes back to a flight day 3 rendezvous, so that would be a 9-day mission, 1 or 2. I think that would be probably a pretty definite 1 EVA mission.
Okay. And tell me again, what happens to 6-person crew if you don't get off till April? Does that get delayed for sure, or could you launch in April and still salvage that?
You know, you guys learn nothing's ever for sure in the space program, right? We have targets that we plan to, and then we go get smarter as we get closer to see what we really can do. The initial cut was, yeah, it would impact 6-person crew. Exactly how it impacts, we haven't really picked what that final answer is. It kind of all depends on when we actually launch. So we've laid out some plans. We know enough that we would keep the manifest in the same order. We wouldn't do anything drastic in that department. We'd have to shuffle some food going around. The up manifest on some of the progresses might change. But basically, there would be an impact. We just have to look at how big of an impact it is. You know, launch schedule-wise, things will move out pretty much accordingly. Everything would bump about the same amount of time, in about a month total. And again, I can't really give you a definite answer. No, the Soyuz would go ahead and go on time. Oh, the 6-person Soyuz? No, right. That one would. Well, we'd have to talk about that one, right? You know. And then I bring the Russians into it, and it gets even harder to talk about what we might do, because they do the same thing we do, which is don't actually make any decisions until you have to. That way you keep all your options open. It's spaceflight.
The second row, please.
Atsuko Miwa from Japanese television network TV Asahi. Have you ever had same kind of trouble before? And what was the crew's first reaction when they heard that launch is delayed?
Well, let's see, I'll take the first part. We have had leaks at this area before. They've been smaller leaks, and again, leaks that you can manage by cycling the valve to try to clean up the leak, which is a standard process in a lot of businesses, including ours. Never seen one this large before. This one was, we have different systems, different monitors looking at that area, and I can tell you this leak was large and was off scale high on some of our instrumentation, and so that's why we concluded pretty early on that we know we have a hardware issue out there. It's just a question of where exactly it is. The crew was not on board. We were still fueling the vehicle, so I don't know what the reaction back in crew quarters was, but probably a little bit of disappointment, but here again, that's part of the business. We don't fly till we're ready.
Jay?
Jay Barbary with NBC. For Mike Leinbach, how are you going to get your technicians out there to work on the situation where it is? And for Mike Moses, if you launch on Monday and then you launch on Tuesday, you're going to be docking at the same time, regardless of which day you launch. Is that correct?
Well, Let's see, I'll take the access question first. What you see on launch day is just the vent arm attached to the side of the external tank. During all of pad processing, there's a big structure that rotates out that has all kinds of access that gets us right up to the side of the tank at that connection. And so the access for this work is not difficult at all. In fact, we've done this before where we've opened up that QD and changed out some internal components. And so the access is not that bad.
Yeah, and Jay, you had it right for launch on either Sunday or Monday. The docking day would be Monday or Tuesday. Docking day would be the same day.
Todd.
Todd Halverson, Florida Today for Mike Moses. Mike, could you explain why you can't have a shuttle and two Soyuz docked at the station at the same time, both from the crew workload aspect, and are there also clearance problems or anything physically that would not enable a shuttle to be there while two Soyuz were there?
Let's see, from a crew workload standpoint, if you think about it, a changeover that's happening when the Soyuz shows up, they're basically changing over command. And there's a built-in number of hours that we want from a crew handover standpoint. There's also a fair bit of unpacking, repacking, getting the other crew ready to go and come home. When a shuttle team shows up, it's kind of like probably I'm about to experience it here with spring break coming up. House guests that crash your apartment, right? And it gets really crowded really fast, and your normal routine doesn't work very well. So scheduling that all together on top of itself gets pretty hard. We also plan these docked missions with the station when a shuttle's there to be very aggressive, and we really count on all three of the ISS crewmen to pitch in and help out and get that mission to take as much content as it can. So that pretty much there just says if you tried to do this together, you'd have to cut content on the shuttle mission, and so it's from a planning guideline, it just doesn't make sense to go plan to do that ahead of time. So we have a guideline ahead of time that says just don't put those two together. Then you look at the actual, well, if I had to, can I? The workload issues kind of crop up. I can't speak to as the station's been changing its configuration since I last looked at it. In the old days, there were some actual clearance issues. You worried the tail of the shuttle was in the abort path if a Soyuz needed to abort out. I don't think that's the case anymore, but there are some issues that you do worry about: plume impingement, EMI interference. The station team has gone off, and I think most of those are actually cleared and would be workable issues. We could get around them if we had to. But again, it's just the amount of work to go do it is almost negative work compared to just waiting to the other side. This is one instance where it would be really good to go in front, but we've already done the work to know that from the workload of doing S6 install and SAW deploy, we do not want to do those together from a crew workload.
Bill?
Bill Harwood of CBS for Mike Leinbach. Mike, I'm still a little bit fuzzy on the nature of the problem itself. Did this valve affect your ability to maintain or have the proper pressure inside the tank as you're fueling and hydrogen boils off? And what was leaking? I mean, is it leaking at the disconnect or somewhere in that system as it comes out of the inner tank? And how that relates to internal pressure during fueling. I'm not talking flow control, I'm just talking how hydrogen boils off and how this valve relates to that.
Yeah, I got you, Bill. That's a good question. It is the system that helps maintain the pressure in the hydrogen tank as we're filling up. As you know, as we put hydrogen in the tank, it does start to boil off, and therefore it increases the pressure inside the external tank. We open this valve briefly to let some of that pressure out. That's a very standard thing. It happens several times during fueling. And when we were going through that phase, with the hydrogen low in the tank, the temperature at the disconnect was relatively high. And when we opened the vent valve early in tanking, we didn't see any leakages at all. It's when we got virtually completely full, 98% full, and so now the temperature is lower, and we went into the topping routine and opened that vent valve again, and now with the colder temperatures, we saw the leak. Again, it's external to the flight element. There's nothing leaking internal in the inner tank at all. It's when we open that vent valve to control the pressure in the tank that we see the leakage overboard at that vent valve. We have leak detectors up there, and we have other instrumentation at that area just for this case. And all the instrumentation picked it up. They all synced up time-wise to going into topping, and so it was a very easy thing to diagnose from a we have a problem perspective. We won't know what the problem is again until we get our hands on it. But you're right. It's the system that we used to maintain the pressure in the tank. We were never in any danger of overpressurizing. We were never in any danger of underpressurizing. It's just that every time we opened that valve to keep that pressure steady, we saw the leak.
And just for the record, the issue then would just be a flammability issue in the immediate environment of the shuttle.
The flammability at that area, that's exactly right. And that's why we have the limits that we do, leakage external to the vehicle. Exactly.
Mark, I'm sorry. You.
Thanks. Greg Dobbs with HDNet Television. Tomorrow afternoon, once you get your hands on it, or once you have the opportunity, what's it take to get up there? It's fairly high.
Well, again, we have access, really good access to this area with a platform that extends off of the fixed service structure, goes right up against the tank essentially, and so we can get right up to the gup and be able to work on it. So the access is not an issue. It'll take us a while. We have to disconnect the ordnance. We have some pyros at that area that have to fire at T0 to release the arm. We have to disconnect that ordnance and then disconnect the actual line itself before we can start inspecting the internals. All that work lays out to tomorrow night into Friday morning. Again, we're going to have a more detailed schedule for Mike tomorrow afternoon, but if this all plays out the way we expect, tomorrow afternoon we'll have, at 1600, we're going to have a meeting where we'll lay out the detailed plan. But folks, we're not going to have any more information about the nature of the leak until Friday afternoon, is the way it lays out right now.
Mark?
Thanks, Mark Rowe, Houston Chronicle. I had two, I think, quick questions. One is to follow Bill's. I guess I'm not sure what was exhibiting here. You were seeing more hydrogen coming out of that vent than you thought you should see, or it wasn't close? I'm sorry, I'm just not quite understanding.
Okay, the vent arm, there's a valve inside this area, right, at the interface to the external tank. That valve transmits the gaseous hydrogen down the fixed service structure out to the flare stack. You've seen the flare stack burning at night, I'm sure. That's where that gas is coming from. And so when we open the vent valve, that gas normally goes all the way down across the vent line, down the fixed service structure and out to the flare stack and burns off. When we open the vent valve this time, it was leaking external to the vent valve right at the side of the external tank. And so while we normally have virtually zero hydrogen gas leaking externally at that location, this is when we had the concentrations in that area higher than our ground safety limits.
Thanks, that clears it up for me. I had one for Kathy Winters. You said the weather changes. Can you elaborate just a little bit on what you're seeing at the early part of next week, I believe you said?
Right. Well, we have an upper level ridge right now that is holding off the fronts, and what basically happens next week is a trough comes in, an upper level trough, and that'll happen on Tuesday, it looks like right now, at least is the way it all looks like it's timing out. So we tend to get, before the fronts, we tend to get more moist, we have a better chance for ceilings, a better chance for isolated showers in the area. We're getting warm, we're still warm, and we're going to add some low level moisture, so we may see a sea breeze each day with some isolated showers along the sea breeze that may linger into the evening and be a threat within a 20 nautical mile circle around the shuttle landing facility. So that's our main concern. We're still looking pretty good though through for Sunday, but as we get into Monday, that concern goes up a little bit. We also have the concern of the timing of the front, that the front right now it's expected on Tuesday, but sometimes that can change. So right now we were briefly talking about a 30% chance of KC weather prohibiting launch for Monday. So Sunday we're looking at 20, Monday we're looking at 30. As we get into Tuesday, that number will likely increase. Right now, we were just thinking around 40%. And when I say we, I'm talking about Spaceflight Meteorology Group. We talked before the mission management team meeting, and we certainly think that there's a better chance on that day there would be a time period on Tuesday we'd violate the constraints. Now, whether it be at T0 or not, it's all going to be timing of that front. So it doesn't mean there's not an opportunity Tuesday. It just means that the front will be affecting the area Tuesday, and we know that at some point that day we're going to be violating constraints.
Here in the front, please.
Randy Siegel, WSTU Radio, for Mike Moses. Mike, with the truncated mission coming potentially, how is that going to affect the water recovery system's ability to get samples back, and how is that going to impact the 6-person crew as a result?
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't speak to the exact details on that one. from a management team's perspective, I've been mostly focused here on the launch countdown, not so much the on-orbit activities. I know that the station team is looking at that. That is one of the factors that play in. But again, I had a very definitive thumbs up from the station program manager, Mike Suffredini, today that launching on the 17th would not impact. Would be acceptable impacts to him, right? So he would prefer to go here. The details we'll have to get you later because I don't have them on top of my head. I'm sorry.
Third row, please.
It's Miles O'Brien with Spaceflight Now. Question for you, how do you know this is a real leak and not maybe a malfunctioning sensor?
Well, as I described, we have different sensors up there. We have 2 leak detectors. Both of them exhibited the same signature, same time, same values. And we also have another gas machine at the same area that showed the same limits. And so one of the things we always do with indications like this is try to correlate the different measurements that we have, and they were all tracked at exactly the same. And so we have a leak, and it's just a question of where it is.
The other thing, Mike, you guys showed me too was we had temperature data in that line that showed that it cooled off as the valve cycled. So you saw cold hydrogen flowing down, and it was going places it wasn't supposed to. So that was a good indication too.
Good point.
Second row, please.
Chris Gebhardt with NASASpaceflight.com for Mike. Is one of the things on the docket, so to speak, to get back into a posture for the 15th to do a commodity top-off for the fuel cell reactants? Or at what point would you have to go consider doing a commodity top-off?
Yeah, good question. We're in good shape from now until we have to really stand down for the Soyuz cutout, whatever day that eventually turns out to be. But we have so much commodity on board, we will not have to do any top-offs in this window.
And again, that's a kind of combination play, right? Normally, we would probably want to go do that if we had a full mission duration in front of us. But since we're chopping it down, it kind of plays right into that. We don't need as much cryo as we wanted in the first place.
Melissa DePani, Fox Orlando. Just a quick question about, I know Discovery's had some issues recently in the past with the fuel valve and now this. I guess, do you guys have any concerns about the Discovery or the shuttle finishing the rest of its missions, including this one?
Let's see. No, no worries. The launch countdown is a tricky thing, right? We have all this work we do leading up to getting out there on the pad, getting the launch team on console, and starting to actually go. There's a lot of hardware that doesn't get used until this time from here through launch. And so we got to make sure everything's ready to go. But then when we get here, we start putting cycles on it. We start filling up the tank. This is the first time we use that vent line. We could have sat here for 4 or 5 more months talking about flow control valves. We still would have had this problem when we finally tried to go launch. So, this is, you think about it, there's not much you can do about it. You take the time you need and then you go count. There's not a lot of worry, we talked, Mike and I talked this a little bit at the last press conference too. There's a big pace coming in front of us, but we don't really look at that because each one you take as you go, and they work themselves out, right? We're not going to go too fast. We're not going to go too slow. We're just going to go at the pace we have to. And at the end of the day, we'll get there. So I still feel confident we'll be good to go throughout the manifest. It's getting really tight, no doubt about it. But it's a little too hard to take the crystal ball and predict. We say that same thing. It's current performance can't predict the future. So we've had some struggles here with this one, but that doesn't mean we're not going to go knock off 4 in a row that are perfect. So we'll just have to wait and see how it goes.
I'd like to go back to that temperature comment if I could, because that was an outstanding comment. And when we connect up this system at the launch pad during our pad validation, we do a leak check at this very location, obviously, a couple of them, and it didn't leak. Well, those leak checks are done at ambient temperature with helium. This is the first time today that this system is seeing cryogenic temperatures, and so there's some effect with the cryogens relative to the leak too, and that's why Mike made the comment about the temperature profile, and why the system engineers brought that up in our scrub turnaround meeting. And so while we passed all the leak checks leading up to count, it's the first time we're seeing cryos, and it reacted.
And I guess I should learn to stop talking, but I was going to follow up one other thing too. It's a good thing. When we sit up here, this to us is not a bad thing. The countdown's kind of built to do this, right? There's stuff that we don't test until we get really close, and if it doesn't work, we don't launch. And so that's not a bad thing that we don't launch on those days when those things don't work. So that's kind of the perspective I think we have on it. Is it's not a bad thing that we didn't launch today. It's a disappointing thing, but from a hardware standpoint, that's the way it works.
Dan.
Bill O. from WESH for Mike Leinbach. You're fairly certain that it's ground equipment. I take it that would be good news. You want it to be ground equipment?
Sure. It's easier to change out. If it were in the flight element, that would be a lot more problematic if we had to break into some flight system. 99.9% sure it's ground side.
Follow up in the front, please.
STU Radio. Mike Leinbach, for testing this part, without flowing hydrogen again, when it gets cold again, the same thing could in fact happen. Am I correct or incorrect?
Well, you're correct. I mean, you get a flat tire in your car and you fix it, and the next time you drive, you might get another flat. So we're going to do our standard set of checks, and we will not press on and count down unless we pass those leak checks, and proof of the pudding will be the next time we fill up the tank.
Got a gentleman in the back corner.
John Ellis, Tokyo Broadcasting System. I have two questions. One, are you at a point to determine whether you're going to be fixing, replacing, or what with this part? And two, you keep on talking about liquid or this hydrogen gas going places it shouldn't go. Does that affect other parts of the structure?
Let's see. We're going to fix it. I don't know what we're going to fix until we open it up and look inside and see where the failed hardware is. And so we will replace what needs replacing. We have spares on the shelf. And so we asked that specific question. We're good to go with spares, and so we're going to fix this guy and get on with our business. The hydrogen gas leaking overboard is not an acceptable condition. That's why we have the ground safety limits of 34,000 parts per million. So we stop before we get to the flammability limit. And today we were slightly above that, but nevertheless we have these limits, and we do not vent hydrogen overboard except out the flare stack, and that's what that system is for, is to burn off unused hydrogen.
Are there any other questions? Right here in the front, please.
My name is Yoshitomi from Mainichi Newspapers. Mr. Mike Moses, do you have any comment from the commander?
Let's see. No, I didn't talk to the crew at all today. We did have their management representation at the MMT, but we didn't get any specific feedback from them.
Clara?
Well, I'm sorry, this is Bill Harvard again. For Mike, I guess Leinbach, since it's unfair to ask Mike Moses a question like this because it's your first mission, right? I mean, as chairman of the MMT. I know you guys it's a disappointment question, obviously. You guys have tried real hard to get to this point after all the trouble with flow control valves. I'm just asking again, I know you guys are always ready for things like this, and it's par for the course in the space business, but still, you had perfect weather and you had a totally problem-free count. There's got to be, at some personal level, some pretty good disappointment that this cropped up today, I'm guessing.
Well, I mean, let's be honest, we'd rather be launching than scrubbing, and we're in the business to launch the shuttle and get the crew and the hardware on orbit. And so from that perspective, sure, it's better to be flying than sitting on the ground. But our business requires perfection, and our vehicle is not perfect today. And so we're going to stand down, we're going to fix the vehicle and fly when it is perfect. And on that day, Kathy Winters will have acceptable weather.
And then, let's see, Bill, you didn't have to take it easy on me. Mr. Shannon gave me a pretty good comment the other day. He told me to go reread the part of the manual that says stop moving the shuttle back and forth this way and start moving it up and down this way. So I need to go find that part of the manual and read that.
Clara Moskowitz from Space.com for Mr. Moses. Just wondering if you have an estimate of how much the delay might cost?
I have absolutely no idea, although I can tell you on a personal level, I think I have 5 or 6 people at home who now had to go out to dinner because they were expecting to be up here watching launch. So,
are there any other questions? Deborah?
One question for Mr. Mike Moses. I'm Ken Scalabra from NHK. You mentioned about the launch window, extending the launch window to the 17th. If you work it out more, can you extend the launch window after the 17th, or the 17th is the permanent limit?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's the same thing. The closer we get, the more we know about what the real situation is. We might be able to find a few more places that we can squeak and squeeze maybe one more day. We could maybe go see how the Russians are set and see if if they're looking good to launch on time. The 17th is our last day right now. That's what we're working towards. As we get a little closer, I'm sure the ISS program is going to take a look at that and make sure they can't just get one more day out of it. But for now, the 17th is our cutoff.
Any follow-up questions? That concludes the STS-119 Discovery Launch Update Briefing. For more information on the STS-119 mission and its crew, please visit www.nasa.gov/shuttle. Thank you for joining us.